Oh.
Oh man, what a cute little dog, man. Okay, look, listen, but the fun's over. Let's get her off the pitch. What in the... Bro, that's a dog, G. You can't substitute that on. Wait, why is there compilation music playing? Bro, you know what? I knew I should have just become a estate agent instead. Yo guys, it is your boy Niran here, and you are watching FTW. This is of course the series where I bring to you the best and more frequently the worst what football has to offer during the last 7 days. Like Florentino Perez burning more Uncle Bens than a Spider-Man movie, Bayern Munich touching kids, and Carlo Ancelotti bunning one up.
Y no sé si sobre esta temporada, si esto supone un paso atrás grande en esta temporada.
Big up the youth, them way out of Kingston.
But what's been kicking off in the world this week? Well, Katy Perry travelled to space, threatening to release new music in her own designated rocket ship. She unfortunately returned back to Earth to a hostile response. Complaints that it's bad for the environment. There's people starving whilst billionaires are doing this. Can we put JK Rowling in it instead? And then blow it up. Honestly, it's a good job there were no footballers involved here. Cole Palmer will be wondering how they recreated the chasm that's the inside of his head all around the Earth as well. Meanwhile, I know Rasmus Højlund's touch won't improve, even without gravity. Now, if one certain set of gooners from the North London area win a certain European competition, we might all want to get blown in space as well. And they're gooners, so they'll actually probably want to watch them. The Champions League quarterfinal second legs were up next in the world of football, and a superhuman performance from Arsenal at the Emirates saw them holding a 3-0 lead going into the second tie at the Bernabeu. And there was one word on everybody's lips. This thing was everywhere. Get a plate of tapas? It's there. Complete your tax return? It's there. School disco? It's there. So why is Jude Bellingham here? It's not what it looks like, bro, I swear. Real Madrid fans and the Spanish media were convinced this was only gonna go one way. Los Blancos were gonna recreate the famous nights of recent years gone by to stage an unlikely comeback and once again lift a Champions League trophy. With a scoreline likely to have Arsenal's admin Bluetoothing his way off a building to the pavement. Fans were in the streets expectant and all over the city, and the build-up was electrifying, even on Real Madrid's Twitter, reminding Arsenal and their fans that 90 minutes at the Bernabeu is more than 90 minutes everywhere else, and suggesting they even had something planned before kickoff to have Arsenal even more scared. Would it be Mikel Arteta's sworn enemy, a Carabao Cup ball? Would it be Mikel Arteta's other sworn enemy, attacking football? Either way, you could bet the footballing gods would be on Real's side here, as Rodrigo swung one into the back of the net in the 93rd minute. Fede Valverde's partner was emotional over on Instagram, saying that the Uruguayan was going to give it absolutely everything. Brother, it's a quarter-final second leg. The guy's not actually going to war. Meanwhile, in terms of Arsenal preparation, and Mikel Arteta was looking to rearrange the ankles of his own player. Why are you doing up slide tackles in training the night before the most important game of your entire career? He was putting in fierce challenges during rondos at 3 p.m. the afternoon before. And it was all getting a little bit too much for some Arsenal fans who were suggesting that it was extremely cringe of Real Madrid to really be pushing remontadas quite this much. Arsenal fans, if you want to talk about cringe, I've got some bad news for you. Either way, Real Madrid's team bus was arriving at the Bernabeu, and the atmosphere was electric.
The passion.
Arsenal fans, on the other hand, were nervous inside the stadium, and just when they thought things couldn't get any worse, KSI started playing inside the ground. It was then time to get into things, and pretty much immediately Kylian Mbappe had the ball in the back of the net. But it's Mbappe, so he was in a different postcode to the VAR line. Speaking of which though, a shock VAR call would come in the first 20 minutes, as the referee was mysteriously called over to the screen and gave Arsenal a penalty for Raul Asensio trying to reorganise Mikel Merino's shirt. It seemed soft, but upward stepped Bukayo Saka to put the tie to bed, only for his ankle to get pins and needles before the strike and send his panenka first-class pose to the left hand of Thibaut Courtois.
What kind of shot is that? Have you ever shot that shot?
His foot must have had a stroke during this one. Don't search that up, actually, into Google. Just a little while later, and another penalty would be given, this time against Arsenal, as Declan Rice also manhandled Kylian Mbappe. What we'd get instead, though, would be a 5-minute wait for the actual decision to be made, as they worked out whether it was actually a penalty to Real or not. They were still working out whether the Arsenal one was actually a penalty, let alone this one. That's why it took so long. The scenes inside the VAR room were questionable at best, and after 5 long minutes of Florentino Perez trying to work out what a Monzo is, the penalty was eventually ruled out. This referee's gonna have an impossible time trying to to get out of this air fryer of a stadium alive. Get that man into witness protection.
Wait.
To be honest, I think both were soft. I think the first one was more of a pen because he was actually pulling on his shirt with his hand, whereas Declan Rice kind of had his arms around Mbappe and let go of Mbappe, like, before he actually went down. Either way, it was still somehow 0-0. David Raya had been yellow carded for time wasting in the 35th minute, and at half-time, Dani Carvajal would give an opinion that absolutely nobody asked for to Bukayo Saka over his failed panenka. And this was kind of indicative, I think, of what Real Madrid were going for. Some harsh challenges, some mental gymnastics to really get into the heads of Arsenal. At least Antonio Rudiger was going for the ball. Not the football, a different kind of balls, but...
Have a fucking word with him then, Red!
Bukayo Saka would eventually get his redemption against Dani Carvajal with a goal in the second half.
Lifts it over the goalkeeper and scores. Arsenal heading to the semi-finals of the Champions League, and cue the delirium among the Arsenal fans.
He brought out Thierry Henry's iconic shush celebration from all those years ago, and whilst Vinny Jr. did get a consolation back after William Saliba left his frontal lobe down by the corner flag, a Martinelli goal right at the death would see injured centre-back Gabriel celebrating this rice cooker of a stadium on fire, and Arsenal through in an historic 5-1 victory on aggregate into the semi-finals of the Champions League for the first time since 2009.
The most repeated word in the changing room during these days.
Remontada.
Remontada, you're done. Out of the competition. I felt like I was waiting an age for this remontidi or whatever it's called to occur. Rodrigo tweeted the night before saying that he'd see us tomorrow. Let us know when you do actually arrive to the stadium, boss man. And ironically, 90 minutes was actually too long for Real Madrid here. We could have wrapped this one up after 60. And Arsenal made the most of Real Madrid's build-up to the game, saying that their fans had supported them through a long 90 minutes at the Bernabeu. It's a shithousery award for the Gunners admin. Lucas Vazquez wasn't too pleased though with the way Arsenal played, saying that they came to defend and did nothing in the first half. Well, I'm glad someone came to defend Lucas, because I know for a fact that you didn't, lad. One fan will be even more devastated than the rest for Real though, as one Colombian supporter travelled all the way from his native South America for this game, and the scenes will be pretty depressing on the way home.
I kid you not, I could blow the roof of this fucking airport.
Carlo Ancelotti was quoted as saying, "We tried." Meanwhile, Thibaut Courtois had an interesting quote of his own, saying that Real Madrid kept swinging the ball into the area, but there was no Joselu this time around. This guy is genuinely yearning for a time where Joselu was up front, rather than wanting Kylian Mbappe. This guy's actually washed, I can't even lie. The Mbappe that turned up to this game and then went off injured, I'm not girl, I looked a little bit different. And it makes me question, really, why does Trent Alexander-Arnold want to downgrade? He'll be tearing up that contract immediately when he sees David Alaba still training with the club. PSG were almost remontada though. They had a 3-1 lead going into the second leg versus Aston Villa and scored 2 goals via Achraf Hakimi and Nuno Mendes, who are absolutely class, with a little bit of help from Matty Cash deciding to offside trap in his own half. Hansi Flick will be turning in his VAR-themed bedsheets, but then Aston Villa rallied back in the second half. With Tielemans, then McGinn, then Ezri Konsa, they only needed one more to tie up the aggregate scoreline. Unfortunately, they missed quite a few chances and would end up going out, but did provide a hell of a lot of joy for their supporters, most of them watching their beloved club in a Champions League knockout stage for the first time. It wasn't much consolation for Unai Emery, who was floored by the drama. But before kickoff, and something quite extraordinary happened. They played the Europa League anthem instead of the Champions League anthem by accident. But listen, this club, they're just not used to being in the Champions League, okay? We've got to let them off. What can we say? Jamie Carragher was feeling devious.
I mean, actually, Marcus Rashford seems fine. He's used to it.
And look, listen, in their defence, yeah, this music gets Unai Emery going. Okay, he's won this tournament 4 times. It's tactical. As for PSG, though, and interestingly enough, they seem to be better without Kylian Mbappe. They'd done a Uno reverse on his actual whole career. Meanwhile, whilst PSG did go through, they lost on the night. Seemingly, Ousmane Dembele didn't want his Man of the Match award that he'd earned from the 3-2 defeat. And it's a damaging blow for Emi Martinez, especially after his mistake for Hakimi's goal. He wore an Argentinian cap to the first leg in France to mock the French over losing the World Cup final in 2022. But you're not adding a Champions League trophy to that hat, it's fair to say. Serie A leaders Inter defeated Bayern to make it through to the quarterfinals after a 2-2 draw on the night and 4-3 win on aggregate. Bayern had suggested over on Twitter they were going to lean forward and try this time, to which Inter told them to sit back down at full time. It's a shithousery award for the Italian side. Bayern's goal scorers here were just a Tottenham reunion in Harry Kane and Eric Dyer. Having met Dele Alli the night before, it's a wonder what he actually said to these two. Yeah, I reckon just score in it. Eric was in fine form at both ends of the pitch with a sensational clearance off the line, only for Lautaro Martinez to drop the coldest celebration of all time right on Bayern's foreheads. Frustration was at boiling point for the Bundesliga leaders as Stanisic then shoved over an Inter ball boy to get the ball back. Meanwhile, Harry Kane looked close to tears after missing out on yet another piece of silverware afterwards.
You look emotional, mate.
Fellow German side Borussia Dortmund put up a fight against Barcelona, but ended up succumbing to a 5-3 aggregate loss. Before the game, Wojciech Szczesny reminded journalists that Barca were actually still in the running for 4 overall trophies this campaign.
You were retired from football last year, and now you can win 3 titles with FC Barcelona. 4 titles, well, 3 titles important and the Supercopa, yeah.
That's important. I saw you celebrating in Saudi.
Meanwhile, Robert Lewandowski wasn't letting the attachment of being a former Dortmund player get to him as he violently and viciously ignored Dortmund's mascot. This man's got absolutely no love for this club anymore, has he? One of the men who's since replaced him as Borussia Dortmund's number 9 was the star of the show here, though. Sohu Girazi claiming the match ball by scoring a hat-trick in this one, so he didn't look too impressed to actually win the Man of the Match award having gone out of the competition. And bro was not pleased about it online either. It looks like he's been informed by a medical professional that he's been diagnosed with a 2025 strand of chlamydia. Things were hot here for Barcelona. And no, that wasn't the chlamydia. There was a little bit of jeopardy for Barca here. That wasn't stopping them from doing their violent offside traps as shown here. Meanwhile, after a hardly fought tie, Barca paid their respects to the yellow wall, only for Borussia Dortmund to reply and said, go and win this thing.
It's not the same game it used to be.
Yeah, you stink. A whole new cock chair's just dropped. It's now starting to make sense as to why this Barca and Dortmund fan were getting things moving in the crowd. And the Premier League and Manchester United are a mess. They held 4 to Newcastle, missing an ill Eddie Howe. Alan Shearer was loving it over on Twitter. And ultimately, Manchester United's only real chance of silverware or anything even remotely positive or productive this season is the Europa League. So they did play a slightly weakened side here, and it also meant Andre Onana getting dropped. Nemanja Matic was punching the air in delight, only for substitute goalkeeper Bayindir to look even more of a mess and give the ball away directly to Bruno Guimaraes for the 4th. Only 2 teams in the whole Premier League have a higher number of errors leading to goals scored, and the substitution here between the 2 shot stoppers is looking ever more clear. Imagine being Ruben Amorim having to choose between Andre Onana and Bayindir for your starting 11.
It's like having a choice of 2 blokes and nick your wife.
Honestly, just leave the goal open. Like, genuinely, it'll be a better value for money. There's also the news this week that Manchester United are interested in signing freshly relegated Aaron Ramsdale of Southampton to become their backup goalkeeper. I'm looking forward to that guiding them to a very strong finish at the top half of the table in a completely different division. I don't know about you lot, but I'm ready to celebrate this downfall. Andre Onana, Bayindir and Boko Haramsdale as their goalkeeping options is crazy. He's going to have a crazy amount of relegations on his CV by 30.
94, 95, 96. No, 95, 96.
This week's Premier League action also featured a final nail in the coffin seemingly for Arsenal as they drew 2-2 to Brentford to drop even more points in the league, compounded by Johan Wissa doing Miles Lewis-Skelly's celebration. It's actually impressive that you can beat Real Madrid convincingly in the Champions League and draw to Brentford in the same week. Mikel Arteta will be devastated realising not every game is against Carlo Ancelotti. They rotated their team for this one, in fairness. Again, in preparation for the second leg against Real. Alexander Zinchenko must have thought he was 18 again, hearing the news he was going to be a centre mid. And this news was made worse by a late Liverpool win versus West Ham. Andrew Robertson and Virgil van Dijk combined for a calamity of an own goal, with Robbo looking like he was going to commit heinous Scottish crimes against Virg here.
What the fuck are you talking about? You fucking wankster!
But it was 3 minutes between this bottle and Virgil van Dijk himself spearheading a rescue, scoring a bullet header from a corner. But shout out this fan just behind the goal, who with some quick thinking and getting the ball back over towards the corner flag firmly gets himself an FPL assist. I'll be honest, West Ham probably deserved a lot more from this, given their second half performance. But a great week gets even better as Virgil van Dijk signed a new contract to keep him at the Reds for the next 2 years. Yeah! The gap at the top of the table now 14 points, and we're 2 wins away from the league. Ipswich are about 2 games away from the league, below where they are currently, as they squandered a 2-goal lead to draw with Chelsea. Fair play to the underdogs for coming back from 2-0 down in this one. A rare case really where both teams reek. Chelsea actually stink. Ipswich are on 20 points for I do like them. They definitely punched above their weight at times this season. But Ipswich also stink because they let Jadon Sancho score. Enzo Maresca was harsh in his team briefing after this disappointing result.
Porque es malo!
No,
Meanwhile, Robert Sanchez was getting booed by his own fans. Now, it was a day in which football was played, which means it was a day in which Tottenham lost, as Spurs were defeated 4-2 by 17th place Wolves. The players at this point turning up to their own funerals. There were curious scenes though before kickoff here, as Wolves' star man, Matheus Cunha, performed one of the greatest crash outs I've ever seen on Instagram, saying he wasn't going to listen to anybody else and that ultimately his main goal was to be happy on Insta stories, and then he deleted it before replying to a few Wolves fan accounts with paragraphs that I can't actually really decipher and understand because I think he slapped them into Google Translate beforehand. Wolves supporters were getting hostile in front of their televisions every time he touched the ball. And he still scored in this one. That's how useless this Tottenham team. Bro doesn't even want to be there. Man City breezed to an easy victory over Crystal Palace despite being 2 goals down. It was a game that saw Ederson grab his 7th assist for Manchester City. This man's outperforming certain midfielders. And it was also the start of the Kevin De Bruyne goodbye tour. I have questions as to why Palace decided to give these lot their confidence back. Jean-Philippe Betetr was joking he was a security guard before kickoff.
The security is something.
Brother, you're supposed to stop things from happening. They didn't stop goals from happening versus Newcastle either, as they lost 5-0 at St James's Park. It was an absolutely beautiful pass from Eze in this game, to be fair to him. It's just a shame it was from the penalty spot and directly to Newcastle's goalkeeper. One of the worst penalties I've ever seen, by the way. Somehow managed to be worse than Bukayo Saka's. He must have put a bet on, surely. Sandro Tonali, he's done it again. Meanwhile, Mark Gahey once again put through his own net in this one. I mean, he scored own goals in both games against Newcastle this season after his move to the Magpies fell through in the summer. He's really pushing to go to St James's Park. At Fulham, and they managed to accidentally substitute Ryan Sessegnon off in their defeat to Bournemouth. One Everton fan who filmed himself stealing inside Everton's new stadium has now been banned. That's surely advantage to him. He doesn't have to go watch Everton anymore. But getting banned before you've even moved into the ground is quite impressive. Meanwhile, Crystal Palace's youth side faced off against Chelsea and tweeted that they'd conceded to Elise. Now, I'm no expert, but I don't think he qualifies for youth games, to be honest.
What are you doing here? And not in a racist way.
But in the Europa League, something astounding occurred. Manchester United won. They didn't just win, they produced one of the most nonsensical comebacks I've seen in footballing history. They were 2 goals up, only to concede twice in 7 minutes to Lyon to take it to 2-2 and level on aggregate 4-4. Then with Lyon going down to 10 men, ended up a further 2 goals down in extra time, only to score 3 goals in 7 minutes, including 2 in 2, with Harry Maguire the hero. Get this man a Ballon d'Or immediately. Fans who left the ground because there were 2 goals down had to celebrate the goals outside, and Ryan Shirky looked like he got PTSD in the moment. When he were like 6-4 down or whatever it was, United trade tweeted he'd given up. This guy stopped supporting this football club for 7 minutes and they completed the greatest comeback in Europa League history. As you can imagine, there was absolute chaos for the players. Rasmus Højlund admitting that he had a semi.
Beg your pardon?
Amad Diallo was completely waffling. This tweet quite literally makes no sense. I tried to read it out loud and my keyboard started levitating. Even Siri on his phone was questioning itself, and he was making even less sense in the interview afterwards.
Hey Jim, they're doing the work, they're doing and they're for.
Lenny Euro probably wasn't making too much sense after being yammed in the noggin, putting his life on the line to block a strike with his head whilst falling over. It was pandemonium for Manchester United's official account on the timeline. This is just the next thing that Amad Diallo's gonna post. Meanwhile, Nemanja Matic wasn't having it from Andre Onana when the Cameroonian goalkeeper went to shake his hand in the tunnel. Obviously, United have had an absolute horror story of a season domestically, but this genuinely was one of the most astounding things I've ever witnessed. Fair play to them to have the character to come back like this from completely dead and buried in the 114th minute to being a goal ahead. It's absolutely crazy. But on the flip side, we just have to defund Lyon overall. In Europe, and on the theme of Lyon, in France, they had a dedicated dog stand where you could bring your pets to games. They could have done with that dog being in them against Manchester United in the Europa League, really. Meanwhile, the Liga table is sitting rather nicely indeed. There was controversy in La Liga over in Spain when Real Madrid faced off against Alaves. It was a game that Los Blancos just about scraped through, although they had to do it down to 10 men after Kylian Mbappe was sent off for an absolute horror story of a challenge. Now, he was given a straight red after a VAR check, unsurprisingly, for attempting to break this man's leg, but the ban has actually been reduced to only 1 game because allegedly he was trying to get the ball. Are you taking the piss? This man was closer to taking his soul than taking the ball. It's an absolutely shambolic challenge, and it has to be some level of La Liga interference because El Clasico is coming up next, and now he's not suspended for that. And it had Carlo Ancelotti stressed, vaping in the stands. Kylian Mbappe's got this man on a blue raspberry and mango lost Mary. Carlo Ancelotti's so old, he was there when they lost Mary. Let's be honest, this man's been smoking cigarettes since he was 6. That's probably charcoal flavour. Alaves' top striker will be absolutely fuming when he's through one-on-one and realises that Ancelotti's thrown the device at him from the stands to put him off his strike.
Fucking threw a vape at me. Fucking doctor.
On TikTok, and one American fan has decided to support a random team in Spain, and he's chosen Getafe. The comments are absolutely grilling him for it. Maybe he's a listed criminal, maybe that's the reason he's going for it. But just put yourself out of that misery. Let's just go again. Say it was a mistake. Meanwhile, there were crazy scenes at Zaragoza, where their goalkeeper, Gaëtan Poussin, scored late on when he went up for a corner against Eibar, whose goalkeeper scored by doing the exact same thing last week. In Germany, we saw the Klassiker this week between Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich. The game ended 2-2. I'm not gonna lie to you though, Borussia Dortmund's tweet about the game seems to be a little bit of a conflict of interest. The points were shared and trims were shared in this one as well, as this sent sensational picture of Serge Gnabry and Karim Adeyemi was posted from before the game. This is class, like the composition of it, the fact they look identical, the different tracksuits, wavy. It was a bit more of an interesting week for Vincent Kompany's coaching staff. His assistant manager posting on Insta that he was looking for a new partner with the name Natalie, so he doesn't have to get a new tattoo and he can just keep the old one. Bro is looking to save cash. How little do Bayern Munich pay you? The new Natalie's gonna be a little bit confused when she sees the old tattoo on their third date. I just proper love you already, I swear down. Meanwhile, Frankfurt's eagle was all a little bit too much for French striker Hugo Ekitike. In Italy, the emotions getting a little bit too much for Simone Inzaghi. He couldn't help but look absolutely apoplectic at some of his players not tracking back against Cagliari. That same anger not really being shared by Napoli's players who are just going out on a night out. And I'm not surprised they're on the drinks because the whole league is drunk. Romelu Lukaku has the most assists in Serie A. Assists? Someone sounded that doesn't make no sense whatsoever, Klaxon. Meanwhile, at Lecce, their fans had better things to do, making sandwiches in the crowd versus Juventus. Now though, time for your goals of the week. They are beautiful again. First of all, we start off in the lower leagues of Argentina. I think lower leagues, it is in Argentina. We're playing for Atenas. Francisco Russo has unleashed this beautiful volley. It's another first time strike now over in Brazil for Fluminense from Reni Contra, and the commentators are loving it. But finally, a little bit further out for the third goal of the week here. We're headed all the way back to the halfway line, where Brian Garcia has picked up the ball of the halfway line for Independiente Juniors and has lifted it all the way over the goalkeeper. Honestly, halfway line strikes like this never fail to amaze me. Hello all, and welcome to The Beautiful Game, the segment where we take a look at the poetic and brilliant side of the game that we love. We are back by popular demand for yet more glorious beauty. Match fixed. And that concludes The Beautiful Game. Now, back in Brazil, and there's unfortunate news for Neymar. Of course, made his return to his boyhood club in Santos, but things haven't really gone to plan. We're currently on one Batman outing and about 14 minutes total. He is injured again and left the field in tears after this recent setback. I do feel for him at this point, but at least he can know that Mother's Day is coming up in Brazil and he's going to be free for it. I've seen this scripture before. I've also seen this script from Luis Suarez, who during an altercation in MLS decided to bite one of his opponents, or he went to, only to realise that it was friendly fire and Jordi Alba. Either that or he just wasn't seasoned well enough, I'm not sure. On the theme of Inter Miami, Messi met Lionel Richie. Apparently he's named after the legendary singer. Is that actually the reason, or is it just because Lionel's kind of like a Spanish-y sounding name? Is it me you're looking for? Nah, actually, bro, I got told Stevie Wonder was gonna be here. Elsewhere in America, in the US Open Cup, we had an upset from AV Alta FC, a third-tier club in their first year ever, beating Orange County SC on penalties thanks to a man in a swimming cap. This brother was going straight into the 100 meters butterfly world championships after this. Meanwhile, we might need a bandage rather than a swimming cap for this Vancouver defender, who's been absolutely battered in the face on the goal line. In Argentina, we might want to put a goalkeeper on the line, to be honest with you. Deportivo Riestra are a side that have made a lot of headlines, and their goalkeeper Nacho Arce has decided that he's going to play pro clubs this week instead of actually being a shot stopper, running out of his goal only to have the ball lifted over him and concede. Meanwhile, staying in Argentina, and away fans have been banned from stadiums for a few years now, it means that Boca Juniors and River Plate fans have to settle their beefs on GTA instead of in the stands.
Espere, no pase la media cancha.
In Norway, there's the incredible story of Bodø Glimt, who have made it to the semi-finals of the Europa League. It's the first time a Norwegian side has made it to the semi-finals of a major European competition. They brought a sensational banner, or like tifo as well, being Boo from Super Mario and defeating Mario as Roma and Luigi as Lazio on the Italian team so far this season. In Mexico, and one goalkeeper had a unique way of trying to put Sergio Ramos off before a spot kick, and that was to turn his back on him. The slight issue being that you actually need to see the ball when a penalty is happening. Jose Mourinho was looking adorable with Alan Saint-Maximin's dog on Fenerbahce training duty. Meanwhile, there's the news that Nigeria, Ghana, Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago will come together to play a mini football competition this summer, and it is gonna be vibes. I want to be there. In South Africa, fair play, a shout out to Dion Hotto with one of the nastiest skills I think I've ever seen, a disgusting aerial flip-flap. And in El Salvador, not entirely sure what's going on over there and why every single game that has been played has ended up with a red card, card, or at least one red card. But shout out to Falcone who sent this in. This guy is like literally an FTW journalist and sends me like 25 stories a week. If you do want to ever see a story talked about in FTW, then make sure to tweet it to me. The closer to home and at Leeds, Ayo Tanaka wasn't really feeling much pressure from this wingback. At Doncaster Rovers, Billy Sharp came on as a substitute, only to find himself walking off the pitch just about as quickly for headbutting an opponent. Bradford and Swindon were involved in an absolute humdinger of a game this week, a 9-goal thriller that ended 5-4 thanks to a last-minute Bradford own goal, and the defender who scored it got absolutely rinsed by Swindon players after. I'd simply have to move out of the country if this happened to me. It's a shithousery award for Swindon. Prescott Cables, meanwhile, a non-league side, were making headlines this week. First of all, shouting out their attendance, a number that Bonnie Blue would be proud of, according to them, and then by getting their football stuck on a McDonald's in the nearby area after it was absolutely blasted out of the stadium. There's also some stuff going on in Belgium, where Genk 2, or their junior side, their goalkeeper, unfortunately and tragically, lost his father recently. Was still professional enough to play. He actually saved a penalty in Genk 2's defeat this week. The opponent's fans, knowing the story and knowing what had happened to him, actually celebrated the fact that he'd saved a pen against them, and then gave him some nice reassuring words and clapped him off at full time. Really, truly what the beautiful game is all about. Another thing the beautiful game is about is the underdog doing a madness. And that's exactly what happened in Norway, where FC Oslo upset all of the odds to knock Vålerenga out of the Norwegian Cup. When you're playing at a ground that looks like a futsal pitch, like indoors in a gymnasium, you know them minnows. And as explained here by Nordic Footy, this side actually lost like 6-1 to a side in the 8th tier of English football. So the fact that they've knocked out Vålerenga, who were in the Conference League a few years ago, is a ridiculous story. Another ridiculous story is coming out of Estonia, where a driver of a tractor clearly got a little bit confused, driving it onto the pitch. Yet listen, boss, when the players are out there, that's not when you're supposed to get rid of the snow and do up groundsman stuff. It was absolute chaos in the Copenhagen derby, where there were 2 extra time penalties and 3 goalkeepers getting sent off at full time, including headbutts and scrapping all over the place. In Scotland, and we've got a goalkeeper in the 5th tier who's, I think, accidentally scored from his own half. Now that it's time for Still 0-0, you guys know the score by now. This is a segment of the show where I bring to you the best of Sunday League and amateur football. We've seen a lot about goalkeepers so far today, actually usually in terms of goal scoring, but their main job is goal preventing. Now, do you have the most athletic, most agile goalkeepers in the world of non-league? No. But at the end of the day, all that matters is that you get your body in front of the ball and you keep that spherical object out of your net. And that is exactly what this goalkeeper's done. Whether he meant to do it or not, he didn't mean to do it, did he? That's not. On to the weird stuff though now. First of all, we head back to the Norwegian Cup that I mentioned earlier on, where that was that crazy upset from FC Oslo. Well, slightly different stuff going on at Bryn. They were facing off against the side in the 5th tier, and that 5th tier side announced that the award for winning man of the match would be an entire 23 kilogram in weight pig. I don't know why the weight of the pig is particular. What doesn't make sense is this being a man of the match award, to be honest with you. What happened to the trophies, fam? Let's just, even a medal, for God's sake. And there's the news of possibly the worst team this season so far. That is Yeni Malatyaspor, a Turkish 2nd division side who have lost all 34 of their games this season and are currently sat on a minus 3-figure goal difference. Can they get themselves even a point before the end of the campaign? We'll have to wait and see. That, though, is going to wrap up football this week, and I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, then feel free to slap a like on the video, and of course, subscribe if you are new to the channel. I don't usually say this at the end of an episode, but I feel like it right now. I really appreciate the sort of everlasting support on this series. As I've said quite a few times, it's been like 6 years now since I started it. It's absolutely crazy for it to still be going, so I appreciate every single one of you who likes, subscribes, or comments. It really does help out. You can also follow me on social media. It is at @theofficialfng on Twitter and on Insta. But it's been a pleasure ranting at you guys today. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy yourselves, and goodbye.